So lately I've done an intensive rewatch of Hazbin Hotel, so when I decide to make more videos on the subject, everything will be fresh in my mind. And in episode 5, I caught something that threw me off, and not necessarily in a good way. Anyone who's seen Dad Beat Dad is well aware that the strawberry-flavored Wendigo and midget P.T. Barnum get along as well as Batman gets along with firearms. And when their bickering wasn't making me chuckle, there's something I noticed.
Look at this lovely parlor where people can get to know each other without Alastor.
Okay, Alastor, tell me, where exactly did you run off to? Now, I myself have many thoughts on this subject, which I will be examining more at another time. But until such time, I'm curious in hearing what you watching at home may think. So, if you please, comment down below where you think he went and what he did. And if you happen to enjoy what I'm cooking up so far, consider pimp slapping that like button in the same manner you'd pimp slap Valentino. And perhaps subscribe as well. That being said, I'd like to ask a simple question. Does anyone think that Mimsy showed up at a rather opportunistic time, let's say? Consider the situation. The big boss of the Seven Circles has come to pay his daughter a visit, and Alastor, in a failed attempt to hide his disdain, begins acting incredibly altruistic and forthcoming. And I gotta say, it was a bit creepy to watch this time around.
Ellie has a very unique vision. I am happy to fulfill her bizarre requests. We're all very proud of her.
Whoa, why am I getting Hannibal Lecter, Clarice Starling vibes from this? And for anyone watching who is familiar with Hannibal or Clarice, you know what I'm talking about, especially if you've read the books. What happens on the page makes the films look tame by comparison. And we all know that he's more full of shit than a newborn baby's diaper pail, and that he's simply trying to act like a more friendly and fatherly figure than Lucifer is. An incredibly underhanded tactic that isn't out of character for the radio demon in the slightest, as he gets into a dick measuring contest with the literal devil. And I'm just gonna say that I think he's outclassed here. In more ways than one, I may add. And right in the middle of the contest, Mimsy just appears out of the ether like the agents from the Matrix.
Hello there.
And there are a lot of things I could say about her, but a picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say, so let us use a visual aid.
Yes, it's me!
Oh, no!
Now, it may just be me, but does anyone find it rather convenient that Mimsy shows up right when Alastor is doing his damnedest to keep up with Lucifer in wit and lyrical magic, all the while doing whatever he can to come across as a better person than he actually is? Especially when you consider what happens next. Alastor has been back in hell for 5 months and some change by this point, and it took Mimsy this long to seek him out? Again, it may just be me, but she seems like the kind of person that accidentally starts a nuclear holocaust before she finishes her morning coffee. So I believe that when Alastor vanished for those few seconds and Shadow traveled back to the hotel, I think he may have tipped off Mimsy to do something dastardly and then head over to his location. Honestly, I can think of only one other reason as to why he left, but like I said before, I'm saving that for another time. And if he did indeed summon her and her shenanigans, then I'll give Mimsy credit for doing what she did in record time. When it comes to such things, she may lay claim to the title of Olympic champion. On the flip side of things, you could say that maybe she didn't get wind of Al's return until right before she barged in, but he's been back for quite some time, and he wasn't exactly hiding. Everyone in hell heard him and Vox going at each other. He's been strolling around the Pride Ring with a sense of superiority like he's the cat that ate the canary, and it's been almost half a year as well. So I'm curious as to what took her so long. The loan sharks showing up almost immediately after also seemed a bit convenient as well. And even though she does mention that she would have wanted to know if the King of Hell was going to be present, this doesn't quite negate the idea that Alastor may have contacted her. He probably told her to do something reckless, and he'd take care of the rest. Husk also informs us that this is not the first time he's covered for her, and his line of, "Who would mess with me?" adds to this hypothesis. And I theorize on this not just because her timing was rather convenient, but also because her showing up helped Radio Antlers in ways that can benefit him regardless of what danger she could bring back to the hotel. For one, he could come across as a more loving and friendly figure that's only here to lend a helping hand. Case in point.
It's time I remind everyone why I am here.
Meanwhile,
I came here because I love seeing wasteful souls struggle to accomplish something meaningful and fail spectacularly.
Like I said before, Alastor, for the first time in the entirety of the series, is acting like a decent individual who's only helping a friend in need. Never mind that Mimsy's personality is utter trash, and her being there brings danger to Charlie's doorstep, but why should that concern her summoner when he can go full kaiju mode, defend the hotel, and then kick out the person who brought the chaos to begin with? All of which make him look better than Lucifer by comparison, at least before he and Charlie have their duet, and he could always say that he didn't know that having Mimsy nearby would wreak that kind of havoc. And secondly, in inviting Mimsy, knowing that her presence would shake things up in one form or another, Alastor could use this as an opportunity to not only come across as a more caring individual towards Charlie than her own father, but to also attempt to drive the wedge between them further and further so he can get a shot at making that sweet, sweet deal. Something that he did succeed in, albeit with extra steps. I should also note that this is one of the few times where he's not being sarcastic or demeaning when addressing somebody, while also speaking plainly versus his typical playful manner. Compare the following scenes with him and others to him and Mimsy. He's playfully dodging questions and inserting small talk with Zestial so his fellow overlord doesn't dig too deep. Based on his age and experience, he's probably able to sniff things out a lot better than most if allowed to pry long enough. Notice that he immediately turns away to avoid direct eye contact, and when Zestial begins to prod a little in the beginning, Al is squinting a bit. We've also got this.
Though it's fun to keep everyone on their toes.
Well, my. If that isn't the telltale sign of a nervous but trying not to sound nervous laugh, in addition to his radio laugh track. Something that was only used once before when he talked about pulling limbs to get the commercial going. And there, it was most likely used for his own amusement and how he does enjoy a little bit of fun whenever he can. So it is very likely that he was being somewhat literal when he spoke about pulling a few limbs. And he does seem to try something similar with Carmela as he did with Zestial, but she doesn't quite play ball and hurts his ego in the process. In episode 1, we see him do something similar with Veggie in how he's out in the open about who he is and what he's about. Granted, she does not trust him at all, and since he can't successfully pull the wool over her eyes, he has no reason to hide. He's also not afraid of her telling Charlie what he said, since she trusts everybody, and she was present when he arrived and stated his intentions. And finally, when it comes to Rosie, he speaks to her as more of a colleague or acquaintance rather than a close friend, and even tells Charlie to shape up and be prim and proper before heading to Cannibal Town. If they were as friendly as they appear to be with one another, he wouldn't need to tell Charlie to shape up. He does none of these things with Mimsy, and acts like he's just met an old friend after a long absence. Which, I guess, is technically correct. For someone who was just cussing out the literal king of hell and doing everything but outright challenging him to fisticuffs, he switches gears instantly and goes back to his friendly persona. Something that is, of course, dropped when the dust begins to settle and he kicks Mimsy out of the hotel. Going from selfless and friendly to what comes across as a nightclub bouncer who has figured out the secret of time travel, based on how he's dressed and his disliking for any tech older than the steam engine. Alastor certainly switches things up in this episode, and the chain of events that transpire from him vanishing to Mimsy's departure seem to line up a little too well, and each event coming out in his favor in one form or another. Final piece of evidence that makes me believe that he staged this whole thing with Mimsy is how he reacts to her protests as she's being kicked out. Now, we all know that he doesn't care about the hotel or what Charlie is doing. He himself has made this clear on numerous occasions. And when Mimsy pokes and prods the subject, in this case rather literally, he just scowls down at her. It almost looks like he's saying, "Please leave. You could ruin this for me." It's the polar opposite of his moment with Husk, where he didn't need to act like someone he's not and could simply go full Wendigo to ensure he got his way.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
And considering he did make his deal with Princess Morningstar, Alastor did end up getting exactly what he wanted, but with some extra legwork. However, with Lucifer supposedly becoming a permanent resident at the newly rebuilt Has-Been Hotel, Al will need to move carefully as he could find himself stepping into a well-placed bear trap. Or, alternatively, if we are to base things off the visuals presented in Hell's Greatest Dad, a skillet. So that was my little theory based around that minor observation, and I certainly hope that you chiming in enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to smash the hell out of that like button, subscribe for more content, and let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I can't be the only one who noticed this little detail, so let me know if you did too. Or maybe I'm just overthinking my overthinking by this point.
No.
With that being said, Godspeed, and I hope to see each of you in the next installment.